So around midnight last night, there were a few drops, and I want to go over them very quickly. The first one is 748. I'm going to attach those. I'm also going to attach the link to the 8chan board so that you can take a look at them. And all you have to do is click on the HTTPS signal and away you go. So 748 is Operation Merlin, and what you need to appreciate about Operation Merlin, and it is interesting on a whole variety of levels, excuse me, why Operation Merlin is of interest to us, and that is that it was an operation under the Clinton administration and then later approved by or agreed to by the Bush administration. No surprise there. Little Georgie W. and Billy Bob Clinton are feathered twins from a different mother. So they supposedly set up a flawed plan or description of a nuclear bomb device and gave it to Iran. And that was going to fix Iran because they were going to build this flawed device and set themselves back. Well, what the CIA did in order to get that to them was to engage and recruit a Russian scientist, nuclear scientist, that they apparently engaged as early as 1994, 1996, and that this person was supposedly going to take the flawed blueprints to Iran. Well, the component selected was a Russian TBA-480 fire set high voltage automatic block, which was modified in an attempt to make it fatally flawed. The CIA estimated that the TBA fire set, which had been developed at Arzamas 16 in Russia apparently, was 20 years more advanced than anything required to get a first-generation nuclear weapon operational. So not only did they give them a blueprint for a nuclear weapon, they gave them one that was 20 years more advanced than we had done in the Manhattan Project. So, and supposedly it was flawed, right? Except that the Russian scientist or someone affiliated with the delivery system was able to look at the blueprints and see where it was flawed. So we basically pumped Iran up at least 20 odd years. And then of course we've got the Pakistani nuclear operations, and we've got this feeding, one or both of them feeding to North Korea. So people say, here's the deal, Operation Merlin. Well, it wasn't a flawed system and it wasn't a flawed attempt, and they made it look like, gee, we had this great plan and something fell through. Well, something fell through about nuclear technology. Gosh, there must be something wrong with that. How did we do that? Well, it went to Iran and it went to North Korea, according to Q, and I'm sure that that's true. And then we've got Obama coming in and doing the Iran deal and funding, and the funding goes to Iran, of course. There's $1.7 billion allegedly on pallets, $100 bills on pallets, delivered on cargo planes from the United States to various places throughout the globe, and perhaps not all to Iran. So where does that money go? And according to Q and according to many others, it goes to Iran, of course, because they got to get part of it, right? It goes to North Korea, apparently. It goes to terrorist cells, which we already are pretty well sure it did. It goes to fund ISIS and Hamas and perhaps others. It goes to fund feeders that are going into Europe. It goes to fund feeders that are perhaps coming into the United States. And it goes to fund, and this is something that was noted by Q a couple months ago, that people like Nancy Pelosi and the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation and Jockstrap McStain and Obama all had money stashes somewhere in the world. And Obama, in his trip in December, January of this last year, went around from place to place and allegedly picked the stuff up. So, you know, it was a beautiful little system, and it sent out billions of dollars, and these guys picked up I can't remember the exact numbers, but anywhere from 7 or 8 million to 20 or 30 million dollars a piece. And so the North Korean nuclear deal, they talk about minis and ICBMs, and that they have gotten, as a result, they've gotten both, and to the war engine and to protection. And see, most of us logical, rational folks will say, well, gee, I don't even understand the treason, and I don't think $20 million fixes the process. I've been happy to give Obama $20 million if he just protect our country. And of course we have in many ways. But the deal is, so we say, why does this make sense? Why does any of this make sense? Well, it makes sense because you have to look at it from a totally different perspective than the one you and I have. You have to look at it from a perspective of, A, I'm not operating for the United States. B, I'm not operating for the citizens of the United States. C, I'm working for a global master. D, I have other agendas in mind. E, the war effort worldwide and the fear of war effort and the buildup of missiles and bombs and everything else, the whole military buildup, all of that feeds the monetary system. They benefit at every level. They build up from the weapons being bought. They build up from the war effort. They build up from all the stuff that's going on at the war. They build up from the stuff they capture. They build up from loans and stuff that they make to the various entities. They build up and make more money allegedly fixing the disasters. We have spent something like $7 trillion in the Middle East war. And do you think that money all went to GIs that were working over there, or even the contractors making $200,000 a year or more helping out? Not true. I mean, there's little stuff that filters out that says, we lost $12 billion in Iraq. Well, how do you lose $12 billion? I mean, put it on even on a scale for you and me, $10,000, $100,000, how would you lose it if you didn't ever keep track of it to start with? And secondly, you have to take a look at this. You know, whenever they say we had this operation and gosh, it went awry, it didn't quite work right, well, take a look and remind yourself about the Obama cover-up of the fast and furious gun running. So look, right from the outset, it didn't make any sense, right? We're going to give a bunch of guns and then we're going to track them and we're going to see where everything went. And gosh, you know, some of those ended up back in the United States and being used against us. How is that possible? Well, there was no tracking mechanism for them. There was no follow-up on it. There was absolutely no way it could work the way they described it. And it worked perfectly for what they wanted to do, which was create more terror and more problems for those of us in the United States. And of course, coincidentally, prove how wonderfully porous our southern border is, which even makes the Trump fence more necessary. So what we have here is the intentional operation of a state of war. And not only does this provide the deep state with big benefits and bonuses, it also provides the shadow government with a way to juxtapose people against each other and make billions and trillions of dollars from it. Feed the system, feed the fear, work on both sides of the fence. Let one feed the other, and then put them against each other. And everywhere there is leakage, if we don't get most of it, we the dark side don't get most of it, we get a big chunk of it, and everything else dissipates. So at every turn we gain. So the second one, number 749, is, again, we're going back to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I'm putting her on the thumbnail. I still haven't figured out how to drop her in so you don't see my ugly mug while we talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg sitting down with the Prime Minister of Vietnam and Hanoi. She was there in 2015. She was supposedly there on a humanitarian mission. She also married a gay couple while she was there. And she made the comment that she would not look to the U.S. Constitution, the one she has been charged to defend since 1993 when Bill Clinton appointed her to the Supreme Court. No, she wouldn't use it if she was starting a new government now. if she were drafting a constitution she would use, she said in the year 2012, I might look at the Constitution of South Africa. That was a deliberate attempt to have a fundamental instrument of government that embraced human rights and had an independent judiciary. I really think a great piece of work that was done, much more recent than the U.S. Constitution. Now that goes to beg a whole bunch of things, which is why the United States Constitution is flawed or dated. Does that mean that she can't use it for all the purposes she wants to? And she also interestingly says that the South African Constitution provides for an independent judiciary. Does that mean that she is not independent? Does that mean that what she does and the rest of the federal court system do is not independent? You know, you have to read into what she says and see whether or not what she says makes any sense. And it only makes sense if you see the dark side of it. And that's pretty crazy. So I've provided you with the thumbnail that shows there. And then Q says, I hear Hanoi is educational, and again, we're back at Vietnam. We've got the flights from a week ago or so. We've got locational stuff there. We've got references to Vietnam. Number 750 is think image drop, well, this drop and perhaps others. Think OP operations, I think that's what it is. Think United, which goes back to the flight that was the direct flight out of Vietnam. Think, when does a bird sing? And you know, there's the, what is it, the movie that tells when does the caged bird sing? Everything has a meaning, Q says, and then puts I in brackets, puts a person in brackets, which again is the kill shot, right? The kill box. So when you put all the pieces together, we've got United Flight that's going out. I know there are lots of skeptics, and there are people dropping skeptical stuff on my channel after each of these videos. You guys are a bunch of sheeple, you're a bunch of idiots. How did you get sucked into this? People are making vast sums of money on this. This is just a YouTube scam. It's a CIA operation, it's a PSYOP, blah, blah, blah. And again, I will say, and I hate to do this, but it bears repeating, even if it's a PSYOP, you and I benefit because it gets us in dialogue. And it gets us in dialogue about all of the things that are important to us and have been important to us for years and years and years as we've become more and more aware of it. Secondly, it looks like there are things moving, and even though people can't see it, you know, we've got 8 or 10 people out of the FBI and DOJ that have been fired. We've got movement there. We have things going on worldwide. We have false flags, some of which have been arrested or stopped. We see people talk about, and I cannot verify it, the alleged 13,000 sealed indictments. We have renovations being made at Gitmo. Well, we're not doing that for 60 people down there, unless that's another PSYOP, okay? Right? Unless it's another PSYOP. So there are all kinds of little pieces that go into this. And again, one of the things that I said in a recent one, when I said the president needs to get with it, and needs to get with it right now, I think the president is aware of that. The president knows that he's only a president for a short term if he doesn't get the things done that need to be done. We have an election coming up in November. It's the off-year election. The opposing party typically makes big gains during that time. It's happened almost every time a first-term president runs. Clinton lost everything in '94, 2 years after he won election, and then recovered slightly, but it makes it a great deal more difficult. And the threat in this case is everybody hates Trump. All the Democrats, to a person, hate Trump, or at least hold that position outwardly. And the neocons will flip and flop wherever the time suits them best, which amounts to what? A third or half of the Republicans. So he's facing an impeachment if he loses this election this fall. If he doesn't make monumental gains between now and November, And if the people aren't aware of those monumental gains, he will lose enough traction in November to be totally feckless and ineffective, and he will be a target. There'll be a target on his forehead for extinction as POTUS, if not for in other ways. So he has a few short months, perhaps 6 or 7 months, to make happen what he needs to do. And it is a very hard thing about any president, but it is a good thing for us because he's on a short, he's got a short candle that's burning. And if that short candle burns and he hasn't made the changes he needs to make, he is a one-term failed president who is laughable. And perhaps he's the last U.S. president we have. So I think he is fully aware of that. The Q information all indicates that. And again, let me point out, the enemies of my enemy are my friend. And where Q points out all the enemies that Q has, Q also significantly points out, to a person almost, the people that I feel are part of the dark state and part of the nasty process that we have to begin to ferret out. So in all these respects, I think we're gaining. Forgive me for rambling on, but it is really important, I think, that we tie these pieces together, and that as we come together and are red-pilled, we recognize all of this stuff that's going on, and that it makes sense, and that it makes sense to us, and we can convey that to people who are sitting on the fence and are beginning to doubt. That's the only way that we as citizens are going to impact this process, is by nibbling away at the doubters, at the skeptics, and bringing them into the process, and then having them do so likewise with others. The CIA formulated the conspiracy theory after the Kennedy thing, and have used that with the mainstream media and everybody else to buffer any conjecture about what might be wrong with our world to us on an ongoing basis. And we have to dispense with and dispel that conspiracy theory business. And the best way to do that is to start to show inconsistencies. Things like that, Fast and Furious, that make no sense at all. Things like the Merlin operation, which make no sense at all, when you looked at them in any way except to make things worse for us as humans. So once we begin to nibble at this, take 9/11, take Sandy Hook, take whatever you want. Take the Mandalay Bay thing, which doesn't make any sense at all from any of the FBI reports, and start to say, you know, if that doesn't make sense, are there other things that don't make sense, and move out from there. Thank you for watching. Again, my apologies for rambling on. Give me a thumbs up if you like any part of what we did. Subscribe if you will. Hit the bell. We'll keep going. Thanks so much for watching, and I love and appreciate all of your comments. Even the people that compare me to Colonel Sanders selling chicken, or Gene Hackman as some kind of twin of his, I guess. Doesn't matter. That's not important. The important thing is, what's the message here, folks? Thanks so much.